And then I will also kind of go over like some ways that you can start to kind of deal with that imposter syndrome. So yeah, hopefully y'all get something helpful from this. And yeah, so let me kind of go on to my next slide if I can make it work. Okay, so what is imposter syndrome? So imposter syndrome is really described as like a persistent sense of self-doubt and fear that you're going to be exposed as a fraud, like not good enough, like you don't belong there, despite like your accomplishments, despite what has allowed you to get to where you are today. So as you see here, there's like an image here of, someone is around a lot of people, but in their head, they're thinking these people have it all together. And I still have like no idea what's going on. So I will just share too that when I was getting ready for this imposter syndrome presentation, I was like, okay, I am experiencing imposter syndrome about presenting on imposter syndrome. And so my colleagues were laughing because they're just like, oh, that's just, that's exactly, what that looks like and what it's like. And so you're a great person to present on it. So I definitely experienced it. And I think even till this day, it kind of ebbs and flows for me. So really imposter syndrome is something that like it doesn't discriminate who you are, like where you come from, like what experiences you have. It just may be more prevalent for other people versus someone who has had a lot of support or whatever it may be, that you're able to kind of really like trust yourself and where you're at with your successes. So let me go to the next one so I can share a little bit more. Okay, so how can you start to recognize imposter syndrome? So some signs, before I kind of jump into the signs, I want to share that like I was saying with imposter syndrome, it can really show up for anybody. Some like maybe moments in your life where you might notice it be a little bit more intense or heightened would be when you are just starting college, for example. You just graduated college and you're starting your first full-time job, or you're starting graduate school. Maybe you're teaching for the first time. So like all of those different experiences, even thinking about getting a promotion is also another time where imposter syndrome can creep in. So you have these great indicators, right? That you've gotten to where you are, and yet you still feel like, okay, I don't deserve this. I really just got lucky. So that's where we kind of go into the signs and symptoms, because you start to kind of focus on all these external things outside of you as to why you are where you are. So it would be something like, I just got lucky. Um, I I only put in a lot of effort. Otherwise, if they wouldn't have seen that, if I wouldn't have put in the effort, they would have, not not either hired me or not seen me as good enough, whatever it may be. Um, and yeah, you'll kind of attribute it to like, even maybe they just like me, they think I'm nice, they think I'm funny. Um, and so then you start to have a lot of these like internal thoughts of like, okay, um, I so scared like that I'm here and they're still kind of giving me these things, like I'm maybe getting a promotion or I'm whatever it may be, but at some point they're gonna really find out that I'm not supposed to be here. Or at some point in graduate school, they're gonna know that I'm not supposed to be accepted into graduate school, for example. And so just kind of like this also image that I have on here, you see someone who has who's standing, giving some type of like presentation or thanking for being awarded something. People are clapping. It seems like people are happy, but this person internally is really worried, scared, and kind of going over those things that I just said in their mind. Um, and so how else could this look like? So it can look like if you find yourself overworking, so maybe you are spending longer amounts of time on things, or you're really trying to perfect it. And I guess I'll kind of go over some of that again in the next slides. Or you might avoid challenges. You might seek constant validation. So you're working on something, but you want, that validation, reassurance, like, is this good enough? Or and it's really kind of based on what other people are thinking or how other people do it versus really kind of just allowing yourself to kind of go with what you have. Okay, so why can imposter syndrome show up for people? So there's a lot of factors. I think one of the biggest ones is your upbringing, your family of origin. So all of that plays a big role in, if you come from a family with really high academic expectations, they themselves have gone to higher education, you may experience that like sense of like, I need to, match that, or I need to, accomplish as much as my siblings or my parents. Um, or the opposite is like your parents don't come from a background where they went to higher education, or maybe they're immigrants, or maybe you're like an international student and you're the first in your family to go to college, or to experience something so different than what your family has gone through. And other factors could also include like your parents, like parenting style, like maybe they may be more kind of going back to like higher expectations, demanding more, or they may be kind of less involved, and you're the one trying to like pave the road and kind of figure those things out. Um, Other things to think about is yeah, like your socioeconomic status, your race, your ethnicity, like underrepresented identities that you might be experiencing as well. All of that can definitely trigger imposter syndrome. And if you yourself are someone who already struggles with perfectionism, which a tendency is, if you're a college student or in higher education, there is a tendency for many of us to struggle with perfectionism. You have really high expectations of yourself generally. That could also be part of your personality. And so all of those things are very much a factor into how imposter syndrome can show up. It also depends on like the culture that you're around, like whether this be like the classes that you have, like your classmates and your professors, or just kind of that relationship that you have. Are they supportive? Are they constantly kind of dismissing you, or questioning you about your work, feeling bad for you and things? So that will definitely play a role. And yeah, and that'll be the same for like your work environment. Do you work with people who are constantly trying to kind of one up another, and not really be supportive? So those would be some reasons to experience imposter syndrome. So here I want to show you all kind of like just kind of a visual of what the imposter cycle can look like. So first, if you kind of see this, like you get a project or presentation, an assignment, whatever it is, right? And then that can generally lead to like, general sense of anxiety. Okay, I gotta do something. Or self-doubt, worry. So maybe you already struggle with that yourself. And then how do we deal with that, right? So then that's where we either kind of can go that like over preparation piece, or we can go the other way. We can procrastinate. So sometimes you may do both, kind of just depends on kind of what's going on with you in your life. You might be over preparing or you might be procrastinating. Or generally you might be just a procrastinator, right? And so then whichever way you go at the end, once you finish this, you start to experience like a sense of relief, right? And so if you're someone who didn't struggle very much with imposter syndrome at this time, and you've maybe worked through it, you would be more in touch with the accomplishment piece of your work. Like, okay, I did this piece of work, I had some anxiety about it, whatever. I got it taken care of, I finished it, and then you feel good, like, okay, I did that. Like, here's a positive experience that shows that I am capable of continuing to do good work. Versus someone who struggles with imposter syndrome will experience more of a sense of relief. They'll just be like, okay, like, just so glad that that's done. And then if it went okay, then it was mostly because, I just got lucky. People don't care too much, whatever it may be. But it's not really acknowledging again, like internally, like you as a person, um, have, great qualities, and even if you're not perfect, you can do things. So then you get maybe like, oh, that presentation, that project, that whatever it is that you just turned in was great. You don't really internalize that. You just kind of push it to the side and just say, yeah, again, I just got lucky. They don't really know, um, that I'm really not that good. So you're still not able to see that and take it in. And so then again, then that leads to like that sense of like feeling like a fake, feeling more self-doubt, um, experiencing sense of depression, anxiety. So that could be like with the depression, it could be really starting to kind of just engage less in your work as well. Not really kind of engaging with your coworkers, kind of maybe staying more inwards. Even it could manifest to outside of your relationships, like because that starts to become more heightened for you. With the anxiety, like if you think about in school, it could be test anxiety. So maybe you have another test and it's like, okay, um, now I have to kind of work through this, and either I'm gonna over prepare again or I'm gonna procrastinate. And then it just continues and continues. Some other ways that it could impact you is that's where you start to kind of experience sense of burnout. You may not participate very much, whether it be in class, maybe you're too scared to share, um, or even in meetings, you may kind of keep your comments to yourself. Um, or another way is like you don't finish the task, right? Because again, that fear of failure, like it's not going to be good enough, so I'm not going to finish it until it's good enough. And so um taking a very long time to finish them or not finishing them. Um, Self-sabotaging behaviors could be like showing up late to whatever commitments you have, whether it be class or missing class or um, even work, right? Really trying to kind of push off those like big projects as much as you can because you feel like that imposter syndrome, you feel like it's not going to be good enough. Again, then that just kind of maintains this whole belief, right? That you're just still not good enough. And then the last point I wanted to mention here is like maintaining like a lower profile. So this could be more like, so you're at work, for example, and again, you're not really engaging much, participating, offering your opinions. Um, and you're also not trying to like challenge yourself, right? You're too scared to do that. And so you miss out on opportunities to grow, to prove to yourself that you are very much capable of continuing to learn things, even if maybe you don't fully feel 100% confident, for example, right? So you miss out on those things. And for like thinking about like students, it would be like maybe sticking with the major that you think is more easier, and not really what you want, out of that fear that you're just not going to be able to do perform well in it, or that you don't belong. Um, it could also show up in yeah, like even in class, right? Like not there's something you're really like passionate about, and you really want to share that. You don't really, you miss out on those opportunities where you could really like share that experience that would really bring some more diversity to the conversation, to the discussion. So yeah, so that's kind of like an example of how that could play out a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to shift a little bit to like talking about how it could show up for college students. And then I'll switch to staff and faculty. So these are just some brief points on um, kind of going back to the imposter syndrome cycle and how it all can kind of show up. So for college students, like a big thing that um, you can experience is like your grades, right? And again, kind of going back to what I was saying, like you may not pursue your educational goals out of that fear. So that could be like maybe you want to go to graduate school, or maybe you haven't really thought about graduate school because you don't think that you're good enough. You think that you got in because of all this luck into college. So then like why would graduate school even be on your mind? So um you don't maybe pursue those opportunities to further your education, and see what that could be like. And that could also be like if you need to seek like internships for your program, maybe you don't look for them, right? Like you procrastinate, or you just do not follow through because you just don't feel like you're good enough. So that's kind of some ways how that could look like. Another way that that could look like for students is like struggling with time management. So really struggling to kind of balance that, like making time to do the work that you need to do, or like studying, and then, or if you do, you're spending a lot of time, right, kind of going back to the overworking um or procrastination piece. Perfectionism, it just kind of can go hand in hand when you're struggling with those kind of things already. And then just difficulty kind of accepting your achievements, right? So maybe professors like, you did a really great job on this paper, whatever it may be. And no, you go back and you still don't feel like whatever you're doing is going to be good enough. Um, for first generation students, BIPOC students, so Black, Indigenous, or students of color, um, they will often experience heightened, or the imposter syndrome could be worse sometimes because of the racial stereotypes, the microaggressions, depending on the gender identity, or other underrepresented identities. So if you think about like women in the STEM field, like they're working predominantly with men in that field. So it can come up as a sense of like always trying to kind of prove like yourself, even if you're not, even if you feel good about your work sometimes, um, you might get more microaggressions from men in that field that, trigger the sense that you start to kind of really feel like, okay, I maybe I'm not doing this right, I'm not saying this well enough, whatever it may be. Um, and again, like you're in a predominantly underrepresented gender field, right? So you're more likely, and that's the same for like students of color, BIPOC. Um, you you can kind of think of like, if you're the first in your family to go to college, um, and you're also a student of color, Black or Indigenous, you start to kind of see how maybe other people in your class talk, like maybe they have all this like vocabulary that you're just not familiar with, even your professors. Um, and you see how maybe they have all these plans already of like, okay, they're looking for internships, or they kind of already have some really good like plans versus you're just like, okay, I'm just really here trying to kind of figure things out of where I am right now. And I haven't even thought that far, or I don't understand what those words mean. So that must mean, right, that I don't belong here. Like these people are way ahead of me. So those are some ways that could definitely show up in imposter syndrome. And for staff, so this is kind of thinking, you're already in your professional position, you're maybe working in an administrative role, whatever it is that your position is, right? You may struggle with like managing your responsibilities. So, and that may be again, because you're already feeling like, okay, I'm not good enough to have this position. Um, and either I need to like overwork or I need to like make it just right, whatever it may be. Which, then can lead to like that burnout, that like stress and like not feeling content with your work because you're so worried about you having to do really well and it still not being good enough because at the end of the day, it's gonna be caught that you really shouldn't have got that position. Um, and again, just kind of just really not feeling like you can meet the expectations, you're not measuring up, which could then like contribute to you feeling like a sense of like stagnation, like maybe you stay where you are, um, you don't allow yourself to, um, figure maybe I can apply for this, um, other position or role within my department, whatever it may be. Um, and you kind of stay where you are, where it's comfortable in the sense that you already know what it is, even if you're not completely happy. Um, but leaving would be really kind of trying to kind of face that fear of failure, and having to kind of face all those like imposter syndrome, like thoughts and feelings even more. So then we just kind of stay where we are. Again, reinforcing the imposter syndrome. For faculty, a couple points is like with faculty, like it can be because a lot of the faculty have to focus on securing grants and researching, and they're constantly working towards tenure. Um, that all of those things can definitely like trigger the feelings of imposter syndrome if they're not like meeting those kind of goals or whatever it is that they have already kind of planned with maybe their department chair or higher ups, whoever it may be. And so then how that again that starts to kind of bleed into the teaching, the research, have a hard time maybe coming up with ideas because we become so stressed and worried, perfectionistic, all those things. And then we start to lose, the the enjoyment of the position of what we're doing, of what we're researching, what we're we start to lose touch with that, because of these different things that keep, these challenges that you have to meet, and having to struggle with imposter syndrome just kind of makes it all worse. Okay, so I wanted to show you all this really nice video. Hopefully I can make it work. So Alyssa, if it's not working, can you like say something since I can't see your face on here, but
Yeah, I'll let you know.
okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna, and then hopefully let me know if the volume's okay too. If you don't say anything, I'm gonna assume that the volume is okay, so this is an imposter syndrome, like illustration video animation, developed by Stanford, and I really liked it. I feel like it kind of really shows how we could experience. Let's see. Mm. Well, hopefully y'all like that little animation. I thought it was really nice. Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. I can do that. Okay, so something else that I want to kind of touch on before I'm getting closer to the end of this presentation, but so there's different types of imposter syndrome that they've kind of put into categories. And so I have a link on here. I don't know if I can like paste it into the, oops.
You might be able to copy it and put it into the chat.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Or I could do it while you present, and then I could do it for you if you'd like.
Oh, you can do it for me, Alyssa?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I need to do anything then? I can just kind of be.
Yeah. Just keep going. You got it.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so while Alyssa's trying to get the link there, you can use that link and try to see what kind of imposter syndrome, the type that you maybe experience. So yeah, so let me kind of go over the different types. So the first one is like a superhero, super person. So this can be described as like somebody who works super hard, right? Like they overwork. I shouldn't say like they overwork. Like this may be someone like you, like or me, right? So and you have to work super hard, otherwise it's not good enough. And again, that's kind of your way of like overcompensating for not feeling good enough. So you do more, you overwork, right? Then there's like the natural genius. This is like somebody who has really high expectations for themselves, and they feel terrible, right, when they don't meet them. So an example could be like you're learning something new, right, and you don't get it right the first time, so you're really hard on yourself because you don't figure it out right away. You're taking too long maybe to learn something, like you keep kind of struggling with it. So those can be kind of a way that the natural kind of genius imposter syndrome can show up for you. And so because of that, then you kind of view yourself as like, just, naturally I am incompetent. Again, like I was not born with these like, strengths or qualities, whatever it may be. So yeah, this is why I'm never going to be good. The other one would be the expert. So this is someone that's like never satisfied with their level of understanding, which I feel like sometimes I can definitely relate to. I would say I can experience all of them different times or together. But you want to master everything, like whatever it is that you're learning, you want to master it. And until you master it, then it's like you'll feel like some sense, but it's like you're never really actually like satisfied. You have to keep learning. And so the other one would be the perfectionist, which I think many of us can we hear about a lot. So you're just never really happy with what you do. You tend to focus more on the negatives, kind of discounting a lot of the positive. You focus more on yeah, just not ever really feeling like your work is just good enough. The soloist is more if you're someone who struggles with asking for help. So you try to kind of figure things out on your own. Because if you do ask for help, then people are gonna know that you really don't know. And then yeah, you're gonna be found out, right? You're weak, you're incompetent. So you really kind of isolate in a sense. But again, like all of these things at the end do reinforce that sense of imposter syndrome for us. So it's like really becoming aware of that, like becoming aware of like, how does imposter syndrome show up for me? When are the moments that I'm going to be maybe more likely to experience imposter syndrome? Like in the past, when was it? Like maybe I was going through a big transition. Yeah, so then you're probably going to experience it again. But it's more learning like about it coming up for you and then figuring out how you want to kind of address it. So we'll talk a little bit about ways you can do that. Okay, so here are some ways that you can start to um, deal with imposter syndrome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about growth mindset. So if you're familiar with Carol Dweck, she has a book on mindset, and she talks a lot about the growth mindset, fixed mindset. So really trying to develop that growth mindset is so important for anybody because it's really kind of focusing on that the fact that you can learn things um as long as you you work hard, you get support, you look at like where did you mess up, right? And you get that feedback of like, okay, you haven't figured out how to do that yet, but you're on the way, like here's what you still need to do. So really kind of getting that feedback in a sense where it's not negative, but it's also not being like really like soft, right? It's more like, okay, you don't you don't have that figured out yet. The yet part is key. Um and just kind of thinking of your brain as like malleable, like it can change, and which is very true. Like um it can definitely change, and you just need to continue to dedicate and continue working on those things. And a lot of it is focused on just kind of the effort that you're putting in, the process that it takes for you to do that, including the difficult moments and how that helped you become better versus like the result, the outcome of your work, right? Like whether you did really well or not really well, but more like, okay, I really did work hard and I got support. And here's where I know that I need to focus on next time so I can do better. Versus fixed mindset, I'm sorry, is when you again, you feel like either your intelligence or your capabilities are fixed, like there's no way of like them growing. So kind of how I like to think of like a flower is more like growth, right? Versus um like a rock. Like you can't really change that. It seems like it's just gonna stay stagnant because that's just how you were born. So really kind of figure out like where is my self-talk? Is it generally in the fixed or is it in the growth? An example could be like, I'm not smart enough to be in college. I'm not smart enough to be in this position, to be teaching, to be presenting, whatever it may be. And that's more of the fixed mindset. So then shifting that to like, I am learning and I'm figuring things out. Like I am learning to ask for help. So that really highlights the learning part, and learning and figuring things out highlights that, yeah, you don't feel completely 100% confident in yourself, and you're honoring the fact that this is difficult for you and that you can work on it. And that's the kind of the shift that you want to practice when you're experiencing imposter syndrome. Another helpful thing to work on is developing self-compassion. So a lot of people struggle with this. We can be very kind and caring towards people that we really love, or even others in general, when they're going through a really difficult time. But we're not that way towards ourselves. Like, we could be really the meanest, which I'm sure you've all heard of that. Like, we can be really hard on ourselves. So this is about learning how would you talk to your maybe best friend, who's going through a really tough time, maybe they didn't do really well, or feeling like they're not good enough, whatever it may be. And how would you shift that towards yourself? Like, how would you say, like, okay, hey, like, you could even say your name, like, okay, Annette, you're really going through a hard time. Like, this, you're really feeling a lot of self-doubt right now. Like, that's okay that you feel that way. It doesn't feel good. But really trying to kind of shift that. It can be weird and maybe some people won't like it. But it's so important, because it really like opens the door for you to be able um to work through this, through the challenge, um and to grow from it, as opposed to like internalizing still that you're not good enough. But you start to internalize that you can work through hard things, and that is so important. um and so, just kind of learning to see, like, okay, this is something that's really difficult for me. I I'm feeling really, really anxious about this. Like, um I don't like how it feels, but okay, hey, that's where I am right now. Like, okay, and you're going through a really hard time right now. Okay, what do you need right now? What is it you need? Okay, I just need to be reminded that I don't have to be perfect, that whatever I do right now, um is as long as I've done my part, is, it's good enough. Um and really just trying to shift that, like offering yourself that care words that you would like to hear from someone else, who's, or that you would offer to someone else during a difficult time. And then another thing is to build your support network. It's so important. You probably hear about this too a lot. But building people that you can go to and talk to about your feelings, your struggles, whether it be family, mentors, friends, finding like a mentor, whether it be like a professor, advisor, supervisor, whatever it may be, that you can kind of check in with them and be like, hey, this is what's going on in my work, in my studies, this is what I've been feeling. And especially it's helpful if they've been through that themselves, right? Like, they can help you feel supported and be like, yeah, I remember when I was going through something like that too. And or like challenging you, like, I believe you can do these things, like, you got it. Like, those are really important ways to work through that imposter syndrome. And going to counseling if you feel like you need more support, um because it's connected, right, to other things in your life, like other issues, like there's anxiety, right, there's all these other things, like talking to a counselor and trying to get more awareness around it so that you can really feel like you're getting better grapple of it yourself. And then my final recommendation is recognizing your accomplishments. So just kind of making a list of like, okay, what have I done to get where I am? Like, I got my degree, or I was awarded this, or whatever it may be. Um, and then just kind of comparing yourself to who you were like a year ago or 6 months ago, because you are growing, you are changing, and that's like a really good way to kind of see the growth in yourself. Versus what we do is we naturally compare ourselves to others, and that often just, triggers, maintains that like imposter syndrome. So really trying to kind of see, like, where was I 5 years ago? Wow, right? Like, I am like, okay, here's the things that I still struggle with, but I've gotten better about it. And that is really important for yourself to do. Okay, so to close, some resources that I wanna just kind of highlight, like, again, if you're a student at NDSU, you can get resources by coming into counseling. We have groups as well. There's also lots of different support services on campus, like Trio, if you're first generation or a student with disability, low income, BIPOC students. Rising Scholars is another resource that we often refer students to. If you want that like mentorship, kind of like, I think they match you with another student and they help you with like a study plan or study skills. So and just develop support. Getting involved on campus organizations that speak to your interests or your program um or even your own culture. All of those things are really helpful for feeling more a sense of belonging and connecting to others who may be experiencing similar situations. And then I listed you on YouTube. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of different videos on imposter syndrome. One that I really liked was about how students of color confront imposter syndrome. And there's another one that I found, well, it's a podcast by Brené Brown. Brené Brown is a researcher on shame, and she has a lot of great books. So I haven't listened to that one, but I think it'd probably be a really good one because she has some other guests in that too. And then I have some pictures of the couple books that I mentioned Carol Dweck on mindset. I think I said mindset actually earlier, but anyway, that's kind of the growth mindset, fixed mindset. And then self-compassion, Kristen Neff, it's also a really wonderful resource for learning how to develop that self-compassion. Yeah, and so there's obviously lots of other resources available. If you just kind of Google, but these are kind of two of the ones that I like mention some of the stuff on the presentation. So yeah, so kind of to close, imposter syndrome is something that, you know, most of us experience. It just maybe show up at different parts of our lives. And it's important to become aware of it so you can start to deal with it so it doesn't kind of, you know, take over. And yeah, an example, I was thinking about this presentation and it's like, okay, I'm totally going to rehearse what I'm gonna say. And there's kind of that imposter syndrome showing up for me. I this was my part of my brain was like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna wake up at 4. We're gonna rehearse. This was this morning that I was planning on doing that. That did not happen. I woke up at 5, which is still pretty early. I'm also a mom, so I have a 2-year-old and he woke up around like 5:45 and yeah, I did not have time to go over my presentation as I had told myself I would. And so again, that's kind of how this imposter syndrome can just show up. It's like, okay, I gotta really like know everything we're gonna say. And but yeah, I had to just continue to remind myself along with my coworkers, like, you know, I'm not an expert in imposter syndrome, but I am a mental health professional and I have experience and I experience imposter syndrome just like many of you do. And yeah, it's a normal thing to experience and it's more about figuring out how to better deal with it each time. So yeah, so to close, I hope that you are a little bit more aware about it and can use some of these ways of starting to work on it yourself. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Annette. Thank you for such a great presentation. Are there any questions for the presenter? We have some chats coming in. A lot of them are just, I don't know if you could read them. They're just saying
Yeah,
thank
let's
you.
sharing, see if I can see. Okay, I couldn't see anybody. So this whole time I'm just looking at my presentation. I have no idea. Okay. see.
A lot of the comments are just saying thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any further questions? I took that as a no. Okay. Well, before we hop off, I just want to let you guys know that our next Think session will be taking place February 15th, 11 to 12 p.m. And during the session, we will be discussing invisible disabilities. So hope to see you guys then. Yeah, thank you guys so much. And thank you again, Annette, for presenting.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. I think, yeah, thank you.